Today, we're looking at prefab variants in Unity. For this demonstration, I'm using Unity 6000.4.1F1, but the behavior and workflow will be exactly the same if you're using a prior version of the Unity editor, such as Unity 2022.3 LTS. When building modular content in Unity, you often need multiple versions of a core asset that share base functionality but have unique visuals and behaviors. Instead of duplicating prefabs and losing synchronization, prefab variants allow you to create inherited versions that stay connected to their source. The true power and flexibility of this workflow come down to several core strengths, some of which I will demonstrate here: game object overrides, component overrides, and property overrides. Let's dive in and see exactly how prefab variants work. In this Unity project scene, we can see the robotic arm-based prefab that we'll be working with. This prefab contains the core geometry, a URP lit material with an associated 2D texture map. On its root is an animator controller with a looping animation clip. There are no specific tool attachments assigned to this prefab. At the prefab root, there is a custom C# component assigned called ARM Animation Controller. This script allows us to easily adjust the playback speed of our animation or to play it in reverse. Because this is the base prefab, any changes that we make here will cascade down to all of this prefab's variants. Let us take a look at how we might build those other variants. Let's start by creating our first prefab variant. I'm going to navigate to Unity's hierarchy window and select the base prefab in the scene. We'll temporarily disable its primary visibility. Let's navigate down to the project window and select our base prefab. Let's right-click on this prefab and select Create Prefab Variant. We'll then rename that prefab variant to Robotic Arm Welder. Now, to edit this prefab variant in isolation, we'll need to navigate to the top of the inspector and click the Open button. To customize this welding-specific variant, we'll need to drill down into our project's content and select an appropriate nozzle attachment. Next, we'll need to drag this asset into the hierarchy as a child of the robotic arm object, specifically inside of the holder game object. We'll move the attachment to its appropriate location. Notice the green plus icon. This indicates an added game object that exists only within this variant. Next, we'll override the skin mesh renderer's material. Instead of the base material with the orange texture, let's swap it for one that utilizes a red 2D texture map. Finally, we'll override the animation speed in the inspector to create a more rapid welding motion. You'll notice bolded property text in the inspector that lets us know that these properties are now overriding the base prefab. We'll now exit prefab editing mode and return to our scene view. I'll unhide the base prefab and we'll place our new prefab variant into the scene, moving it 8 units over to the side. Now let's enter play mode so that we can observe the unique appearance and motion for each of these prefabs. Let's repeat the process and create a painter-specific variant of our robotic arm. We'll navigate to our project window and select our base prefab. Let's right-click on this prefab, and again, we'll select Create Prefab Variant. I'll rename this variant to Robotic Arm Painter. Now let's edit this prefab variant in isolation, but this time we'll use a different technique. We'll double-click on the prefab variant to open it for editing. Next, let's navigate our project content and we'll find an appropriate paint nozzle attachment. Let's drag and drop that attachment into this variance hierarchy. We're going to ensure it's properly positioned, and we're going to nest it under the holder object. Now we'll also override the material again, this time swapping in a material that has a blue texture map. Find our material property and select Robotic Arm Painter. Now for the motion, I want a completely different flow. So we're going to navigate to the Prefab variance root, and on our custom script, the arm animation controller, I'll check the play in reverse Boolean. The bold property label instantly tells us that there's an override on this variant. This also means that this specific arm will now run its animation backward compared to the base. Now let's exit Prefab editing mode and return to our scene view. Let's add this painter-specific Prefab variant to our scene and move it -8 units over to the side. Save our scene. And we'll enter play mode so that we can take a look at the unique motion and rendering for each of these prefab variants next to our base prefab in the center. To wrap up, let's scale the base prefab. The variants instantly inherited this structural change while protecting their unique overrides. This decoupled workflow is the true power of prefab variants.